Hello? It's me. And yes, I received more letters. 4 stories this time. 4 rides in elevators that turned from safe routine into pure terror. Proof, once again, that even the most ordinary places can become cages. But before I read them to you, tell me, where are you listening from right now? Maybe from your room, your car, or maybe even inside an elevator. Are you already afraid? And if not, are you ready for the horror waiting just ahead? Hit the like button, subscribe, and stay close. Because you don't want to miss the next true story when the doors close and the lights begin to flicker. Now, let's begin. The perfect cage. I work on the 20th floor. For years, the elevator was nothing to me, just a metal box that carried me up and down, a daily routine I never questioned. Safe, predictable, boring. Now I take the stairs. Every day. 20 flights down in the morning, 20 flights back up at night. People laugh when I tell them. They think it's about fitness. They don't know the truth. They don't know what happened in that elevator, or why the sound of doors sliding shut still makes my skin crawl. My name is Emily, and I was 25 when I learned how quickly a familiar space can turn into a prison. It was a Friday night. The office was empty except for me. Everyone else had bolted at 5 sharp, but I stayed to finish a presentation. I told myself I didn't mind. The quiet helped me focus. By the time I shut down my computer, the lights on half the floor had already timed out, leaving only strips of cold fluorescence humming above me. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the elevators, my heels clicking across the marble. I pressed a button, watched it glow red. The building was silent except for the mechanical groan of the elevator climbing toward me. That's when I heard footsteps. I turned and saw him. Josh. The new guy. He'd been there maybe a month, and in that short time he'd become impossible to ignore. Always hovering near the break room. Smiling too much. Watching me with an intensity that felt like he was trying to read every secret I had. I told myself it was nothing, just awkward friendliness, maybe even a crush. But the truth was, it made my stomach tighten every time I caught his eyes. Still here? He asked, stepping out of the shadows like he'd been waiting. Yeah, I said quickly. Deadline. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. I stepped inside, grateful for an escape. He followed. I pressed L. For lobby. The doors began to close. And then Josh leaned forward and pressed a different button. The emergency stop. The elevator jolted violently, freezing between floors. The doors hung half-closed, trapping us in. My pulse spiked. I tried to laugh. Wrong button? He looked at me with that same smile that never reached his eyes. No, he said quietly. The right one. I wanted time with you. An hour, maybe. The air seemed to thin. My back pressed against the wall. You could have just asked me out for coffee, I whispered, forcing calm. Josh tilted his head, almost amused. Coffee ends. Coffee lets you leave. But this. He spread his arms to the walls of steel around us. This is perfect. No way out. I swallowed hard. Why here? His smile widened. Because you're like a little bird, Emily. Always fluttering around, out of reach. For a bird like you, this elevator is the perfect cage. The word cage hit me like ice water. He stepped closer. I smelled his cologne, sharp and suffocating in the small space. I've been watching you. He went on. You arrive at 8:47 most mornings. 8:52 if you stop for that blueberry muffin you love. You hum when you're nervous. You touch your necklace when you lie. His eyes flicked down. Like you're doing right now. I hadn't realized my fingers were clutching the chain at my throat. I forced my hand away, my entire body shaking. He leaned closer. You see? I know you better than anyone here. And tonight, no one's coming to save you. Something in me snapped. My fear burned so hot it became clarity. If I froze, I was done. I lowered my voice, let it tremble. Please, I whispered. The air, it's too hot. Can you turn the fan back on? Josh liked control. He liked playing reasonable. With a smug little nod, he pressed the red button again. The elevator hummed, the fan whirred back to life. And with it came a soft click. A sound I'll never forget, the emergency line activating. I pressed my palm flat against the panel, pretending to steady myself, but really I was holding down the tiny recessed alarm button. 3 long seconds. A voice crackled from above. Security. Do you need assistance? Josh's head snapped up. No, he barked. His smile was gone. Just a malfunction. The elevator shuddered and resumed moving. We were descending. That was my chance. I ripped my water bottle out of my tote and swung with everything I had. The metal cracked against his temple. He stumbled, cursed, reaching for me just as the doors slid open on the lobby. 2 guards were already waiting. They rushed in, pulled him back, pinned him to the floor. I stumbled out into the open air of the lobby, shaking so badly I thought I'd collapse. Later I learned he'd done this before. Another job, another woman. Whispers of complaints that went nowhere. And when it was over, he just found someone new. This time, it was me. Now, every time I walk past those elevator doors, I hear his voice again. For a bird like you, this elevator is the perfect cage. And that's why I'll never set foot in one again. I take the stairs. Every day. 20 floors down. 20 floors up. My legs ache, my lungs burn, but it doesn't matter. Because cages are for birds. And I refuse to step into one ever again. But if you think the worst thing that can happen is being trapped with someone you know is dangerous, you're wrong. Because sometimes the stranger standing next to you is far more terrifying. "20 minutes of terror in the elevator. My name is Daniel. I was 31 when it happened. I'd been living in a downtown apartment building for almost a year. It wasn't luxury, though it tried to look like it, marble patterned tiles that were really plastic, dim chandeliers with half the bulbs dead, and elevators that groaned every time they climbed higher than the 5th floor. That night I came home late from a friend's place. It was nearly midnight. The streets outside were empty, the kind of silence that makes your footsteps too loud. I wanted nothing more than to get upstairs, shower, and collapse into bed. But when I stepped into the lobby, I realized I wasn't alone. A man was standing by the mailboxes. At first I thought he was waiting for someone. He wore a faded hoodie, jeans, sneakers with torn soles. His posture was odd, too stiff, like he didn't quite know what to do with his arms. He didn't check a single mailbox. He just stood there, staring at the brass slots as if he could see through them. I pressed the call button for the elevator. The arrow above the doors glowed red and began its slow crawl downward. That's when I felt his eyes slide onto me. The car arrived with a groan. The doors creaked open. I stepped in quickly. But before the doors could shut, he followed. Already my skin prickled. Something in me whispered, "Don't." But it was too late. The doors closed, sealing us inside. The ride began in silence. I focused on the panel, watching the numbers climb, 2, 3, 4. My apartment was on the 9th floor. Just 5 more levels. Then, out of nowhere, he laughed. Not a nervous chuckle. Not a drunk laugh. A sharp, high-pitched cackle that ricocheted around the steel box. I froze, forcing myself not to look. By the time we hit the 5th floor, he leaned forward and pressed his tongue flat against the wall. A slow, wet drag across the cold metal. The sound made my stomach twist. I tried to stay still. Tried to breathe evenly. My right hand hovered over the strap of my backpack, knuckles white. And then, with a violent jolt, the elevator shuddered to a stop. The lights flickered twice and switched to the dim orange of the emergency system. We were stuck. The man smiled. His lips glistened. "Now we wait," he whispered. My chest tightened. I reached for the alarm button, but his hand shot out, grimy, trembling fingers closing over mine. His skin was damp. "Don't," he hissed. "Don't ruin it." I pulled my hand back, every instinct screaming at me to get out. But there was nowhere to go. Just steel walls and his laughter filling the space. For the next 20 minutes, I was trapped in madness. He pressed his ear against the corner seam, nodding like someone was whispering secrets to him from inside the walls. Then he began to hum. At first random notes, then a song. A lullaby. "Hush, little baby!" Broken by giggles, the words slurring, his voice cracking into high shrieks of laughter. I couldn't move. I counted the screws in the panel, counted my breaths, anything to keep from screaming. "Do you hear them?" he asked suddenly. His forehead smacked against the doors, over and over. "They're laughing too. They want you to laugh with us." My throat went dry. "Who?" I managed to whisper. He didn't answer. He licked the wall again, leaving a wet trail that caught the dim light. Then he crouched, hugging his knees, rocking back and forth. His lips moved in a blur of whispers I couldn't understand. His wide eyes never left me. Minutes dragged like hours. The air grew hotter, thicker. My back was slick with sweat, my legs trembling. I thought of hitting the alarm, thought of calling for help, but what if he snapped the second I moved? Then the switch flipped again. He exploded upward, fists pounding the walls, screaming nonsense syllables that shook the tiny cabin. The metal boomed like a drum, vibrating through my bones. I pressed into the corner, bracing for the moment his rage turned on me. But just as suddenly he stopped. He pressed his palms flat against the door, whispered something in a sing-song voice, and giggled like a child who just heard the punchline of a cruel joke. Finally, after 20 endless minutes, the elevator groaned back to life. The normal lights flickered on. The car descended smoothly. The doors opened on the lobby. I bolted out, lungs burning, legs barely working. When I turned back, he was still inside. Still crouched. Still smiling. The doors closed on his face, sealing him away. Shaking, I stumbled to the night guard and poured the story out. He frowned, walked me to the security office, and pulled up the feed from the elevator camera. The footage showed me stepping in. The man following. Then static. 20 minutes erased. When the video returned, the doors were opening and I was stumbling out alone. The guard stared at the screen, then at me. "Glitch," he said flatly. "System must have skipped." But I know what I lived through. 20 minutes. 20 minutes of pure terror with a stranger who licked the walls, sang lullabies, and laughed like the dark itself was whispering to him. And sometimes, late at night, when I pass the elevator's shaft, I swear I hear humming. Off-key. Waiting. And if you think that's the worst thing an elevator can hold, wait until you're trapped inside with a crowd. Because sometimes it isn't one man you should fear. Sometimes it's the panic of too many people, pressed together, when the doors won't open, and the air starts to run out. Panic in the packed elevator. It was New Year's Eve, technically already the first minutes of the new year. I was 29, a little drunk on cheap champagne and the kind of relief that comes from surviving December. Our office rented out the hotel ballroom next door. There'd been confetti cannons, sloppy toasts, a countdown that felt like a dare. I slipped out early with my coat over my arm, glitter stuck to my sleeves, ears still ringing from a DJ who thought volume was a personality. The hotel had 3 elevators. 2 were jammed with party people in sequins and suits. The third arrived with a ding and an exhale of warm air. I stepped in, pressed 15, and promised myself I'd drink water and call it a night. Then the crowd came with me. A couple in matching paper crowns squeezed in, apologizing. 2 guys in loosened ties stumbled in behind them, still arguing about which bar was actually open till 4, bro. A woman with silver heels hooked her arm through her friend's and pulled her inside on laughing autopilot. A big man in a velvet jacket shouldered through with a grunt and hit closed door, like it owed him money. The weight limit bell chirped. Nobody cared. The doors slid shut on a hand, then opened again to let 3 more in. We were shoulder to shoulder, perfume and cologne battling, breath warming the tiny room into a human greenhouse. I ended up near the panel, my chest pressed against someone's elbow, my back against a sequined purse that felt like a bed of nails. 15? I said, angling an index finger toward the button. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. The woman with the purse nodded. A chorus of numbers followed. 9, 20, 7, oh, penthouse if you can. And then the car began to climb, heavy and slow, like we were hauling ourselves up by our fingernails. We made it to the 4th floor before the first jolt. A hiccup in the cables, a soft thunk that turned a few heads and drew one nervous laugh. We kept rising. On 6, the light above us flickered once and steadied. I tried not to feel the sweat starting under my collar. On 8, the elevator stopped. Not a gentle hotel stop. A hard, final, no more stop that threw us into one another with a muted yelp of zippers and apologies. The bell chirped twice, the lights dimmed to the emergency setting, and the fans slowed to a weak, complaining hum. Silence crushed the room. Then voices. Questions that weren't questions. Is it stuck? We good? That's fine, it's fine, someone call. Does anyone have signal? I did. 1 bar. I pressed the alarm button first. A tinny tone answered, then an equally tinny voice. Hotel maintenance. Please remain calm. We see the stop and are on our way. Remain calm. In a shoebox with 15 strangers and the air already turning thick enough to drink. A woman near the back giggled, then hiccuped a small sob. I'm claustrophobic, she announced to no one and everyone. Like medically. It's fine, said the man in the velvet jacket, voice too loud, command pretending to be kindness. We'll pry the doors and climb out. I've seen how they do it. Don't, I said automatically, because the alarm voice was still on the line and because prying a door open between floors is a good way to turn a bad night into a funeral. They're sending someone. He looked at me like I'd stolen his spotlight. You work here? You a cop? I'm just a guy who likes living, I said. A couple people laughed too hard at that, the brittle kind that sounds like breaking glass. The temperature climbed. 10 bodies become one body in a space like that, a sweating, breathing organism with too many lungs. Someone's cologne turned sour in the heat. The paper crowns wilted. My phone slipped in my damp hand, screen fogging each time I exhaled. The claustrophobic woman started breathing too fast. A friend fanned her with a cocktail napkin that did nothing but move the hot air around. Look at me, the friend said, eyes big and terrified. In for 4, out for 8. In for no, slower. A guy in a tie began pounding the door with the base of his palm. Hey. Hello? Hey. Each hit sent a shudder through the group, off-rhythm flinches, hands snatching at straps and sleeves, apologies tripping over curses. The velvet jacket man shouldered past people to get to the seam. He wedged his fingers in and pulled like the building was a stubborn jar. Stop, said a new voice, low, steady. An older woman with gray hair and the kind of stillness that made you listen. You'll hurt someone. Or yourself? He ignored her. The seam widened half an inch and snapped shut, a mean metal bite. He swore and yanked his hand back, skin blooming red. We can't just stand here, he said, and now the command had turned to accusation. We can't just wait. Panic spread the way fire does, not in a line, but in sudden, ugly flowers. The gigglers started crying and hitching little gasps. Someone muttered that there wasn't enough air. Someone else told them to shut up because saying that makes it true. 2 strangers who'd been too close for too long snarled at each other over a heel crunching a toe. The elevator shrank again, a trick of the mind that had nothing to do with measurements, and everything to do with counting breaths. I focused on the numbers, anything to keep my head. 15 of us. 3 square feet for me, maybe. I pictured a box, drew lines in my mind, gave everyone their own square to stand in. I thought about how air doesn't run out as fast as movies want you to believe, How CO2 is more the problem than oxygen. How panic makes you breathe wrong and your own biology punishes you for it. Hey, I said to the claustrophobic woman, pulling my voice down to something you'd use with a skittish dog. What's your name? Leah, she said, and the word came out like a cough. Leah, I'm Dan, I said. I'm going to count with you. Ready? In for 4. We did it together. A stranger on my left joined in. The friend with the napkin started counting too, her voice steadying with the rhythm. 4 in, 6 out, then 8, then 6 again when 8 was too much. It didn't fix the heat, or the smell, or the velvet man muttering about lawsuits, but it gave our little corner a beat to move to that wasn't fear. Then the aggressive guy snapped. It wasn't a scream or a punch, just a sudden shove, the kind you give a door that won't open, except it wasn't a door, it was a person, and that person stumbled into another, and in a blink the elevator stopped being a room and became a wave. Bodies surged, pressed, rebounded. A high heel slid sideways and its owner yelped. A hand grabbed my shoulder hard enough to bruise. The older woman fell against me and I braced both of us against the panel. Stop! She barked, voice like a clap of thunder. It was so unexpected, so loud and clean, that the wave hesitated. She turned, eyes hard. Look at me. If one of you falls, we all fall. You want to be the reason we crush someone? Silence again, the scared kind. I didn't know her, but I loved her in that moment. Something in the elevator itself sighed, a mechanical breath, a gear deciding whether to be merciful. The emergency light flickered. A thin line of cooler air slid across my ankles like a promise. Somewhere above us, footsteps, metal on metal, voices. Maintenance. The speaker crackled at last, as if it had been trying to reach us from a long way off. We've got you. Do not try to force the doors. We'll bring you down. A sound went through the room that wasn't a cheer but wasn't crying either. It was the noise humans make when they decide not to die yet. The velvet jacket man deflated. Leah's shoulders dropped. I realized my jaw hurt from clenching. The car jerked, then crept downward the way you carry a cup you're afraid to spill. A few inches at a time. The fan pushed a gout of cooler air that felt like winter in a bottle. A hand found mine and squeezed. I squeezed back without looking to see whose it was. When the doors finally parted on the lobby, it was like watching a mouth open to scream and realizing it was a yawn. Bright light flooded the box. A maintenance guy stood there with a crowbar and a tired smile. One at a time, he said, as if speaking to a classroom. No pushing. You're okay. We spilled out, not in a rush but in a careful, embarrassed shuffle of people who will never speak again about how close they came to being animals. The velvet man brushed past, already on the phone, already rewriting the story so he was the hero. Leah hugged her friend like they were promising something. The older woman squeezed my forearm and said, "Good counting," and disappeared into the lobby glow. I stood there for a long minute, feeling the imprint of strangers on my skin. My shirt clung cold to my back. Glitter still stuck to my sleeves like the afterimage of a firework. I used to think I was afraid of small spaces. Now I know what I'm really afraid of is people in small spaces. Their breath, their need, the way fear turns us into gravity that drags each other down. I took the stairs to 15. Halfway up, I stopped and listened. Through the concrete and rebar, the building was a throat clearing itself, elevators moving, cables whispering. Somewhere, a bell dinged. Somewhere, the doors opened and a crowd laughed like nothing bad had ever happened anywhere. And I kept walking, one step at a time, into a year that had already taught me this. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the box. It's how quickly we forget the box almost ate us. What happens when the rescue you've been waiting for isn't rescue at all? Keep listening. The next story isn't about strangers packed inside a box. It's about the hatch above your head. The hand that shouldn't know your name. And the voice that whispers you don't belong here, you belong upstairs. The False Rescuer. My name is Nick. I'm 27, and I'll never step into an elevator again. It happened last spring. I had been working late, much later than I should have, in one of those glass office towers that look invincible during the day but feel hollow at night. By the time I shut down my computer, the floor was empty, the lights shutting off row by row on a timer until I was walking through a maze of shadows toward the elevator bay. I was too tired to take the stairs. I pressed the call button, rubbed my eyes, and stepped into the first cab that arrived. The mirrored walls reflected me back 3 times over: rumpled shirt, dark circles, a man who wanted nothing but to sleep and forget about deadlines. The doors closed. The car hummed, descended smoothly. Until it didn't. Somewhere between the 12th and the 9th floor, the elevator jolted hard enough to throw me against the rail. The lights flickered, then snapped to the sickly red glow of emergency power. We stopped. At first I told myself it was a hiccup, a pause before the motor kicked back in. I waited. Counted to 30. Nothing. I pressed the alarm. A tone buzzed, then cut out. No voice answered. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Not even one bar. I laughed under my breath, but it sounded thin, unconvincing. I pressed my palms to the cold steel and whispered, "Okay. Breathe. They'll fix it. 10 minutes tops." 10 minutes became 30. My shirt clung damp to my back. Every creak in the shaft sounded like the building exhaling around me. My own heartbeat filled the silence until it felt like the walls were echoing it back. And then, a metallic scrape above me. I tilted my head back. The ceiling panels shifted. A rectangle of darkness cracked open, and a face peered down. "Maintenance," a voice said. Low. Gravelly. "Hang tight, we'll get you out." Relief almost broke me. "God, thank you," I called. My voice cracked. "I've been stuck." "Climb," he interrupted. A gloved hand slid through the opening, reaching. "Come on. I'll pull you up." I stepped beneath the hatch. His face was half hidden in shadow, but I saw the outline of a helmet, the faint gleam of a reflective stripe on a jacket. I reached up instinctively, then froze. The glove was filthy. Streaked with something dark, sticky, half-dried. The sleeve above it was shredded, fabric stiff as if it had been soaked and left to rot. And then I saw his eyes. When I met them, my breath locked. They weren't the eyes of a rescuer. Too wide. Too pale. Pupils so small they looked like pinholes, fixed on me not as a person but as prey. "Come on," he said again, smiling now. A smile that didn't belong on any human face. "Up you go. It's safer up here." Every instinct in me screamed to back away. I stumbled, slammed into the mirrored wall, shaking my head. "No. I'll wait for security. Or the fire department." The hand shot lower, curling as if it could already taste my wrist. "Don't be stupid, Nick. This is your only chance. Don't you want to get out?" The sound of my name in his mouth froze me cold. I hadn't told him. He couldn't have known. I pressed myself into the corner, trembling, eyes locked on the hatch. His grin widened. Lips cracked. Teeth stained dark, gums receding. He whispered in a voice that seemed to echo inside my skull. "You belong upstairs." Then he lunged. The hand plunged into the car, fingers clawing the air, nails screeching sparks from the railing as they missed me by inches. I hit the alarm again, pounding it with my fist, screaming hoarse. The elevator walls rang with the sound. Then, sudden silence. The hand withdrew. The face vanished. The hatch slammed shut with a metallic bang that shook dust from the ceiling. For a long time I stood frozen, heart galloping, ears straining for another scrape. Nothing. Just the wheeze of the emergency fan and the sound of my ragged breaths. Minutes later, the elevator shuddered. Lights flickered. We descended smoothly again as if nothing had happened. The doors slid open on the lobby. 2 uniformed maintenance workers stood there, blinking at me. One frowned. "You the guy stuck between 12 and 9? His jacket was clean. His eyes were normal. His gloves spotless. I nodded weakly, stumbling past them into the night air. They didn't believe me when I told them about the hatch. About the hand. About the smile. They swore no one had been sent up yet. No one at all. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, I dream I'm still in that steel box. The ceiling splits. The hand comes down again. The grin widens. And the voice whispers my name in the dark. You belong upstairs. This was the final story. But if you've stayed with me through all four, you already know, these aren't just stories. They're warnings. Because the truth is, the next ride you take, the next stranger who steps in behind you, the next time the lights flicker and the doors don't open, might not be just an elevator malfunction at all. It might be you. Let me know what you think in the comments. This was Tell Me What Happened. I'll see you in the next story.